There's a reason certain people make you uncomfortable without saying a word. Their mind intimidates you before their mouth opens. You feel mentally outmatched, cognitively outpaced, intellectually outmaneuvered. This isn't about IQ education. It's about mental authority, the unmistakable power of someone who owns their thinking rather than renting popular opinions. Most people are walking around with downloaded thoughts, pre-packaged perspectives, and second-hand convictions. They believe they're thinking when they're merely remembering what they've been told to think. Their certainties aren't conclusions they've reached, they're positions they've inherited. Their convictions aren't personal discoveries, they're social accommodations. In a world of mental followers, the independent thinker appears almost threatening, and that's precisely the kind of mind you need to build. You were born with something that kings cannot buy. Presidents cannot legislate it. Dictators cannot control it. The wealthy cannot purchase it. What am I talking about? Your mind. The most powerful asset you possess is not in your bank account, it's between your ears. Every person sitting here has a mind so powerful it can transform nations. But most people never tap into this power. They live trapped in mental prisons they built themselves. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a mind so strong it actually scares people. When I was a young boy growing up, there was a man in our neighborhood who everyone avoided. Not because he was physically intimidating. He was actually quite small in stature. Not because he was wealthy, he lived modestly. People avoided him because his mind was so strong. His vision so clear. His purpose so defined that he made others uncomfortable. He knew exactly who he was and where he was going. That kind of certainty terrifies the average person. You see, a strong mind doesn't ask for permission to be great. A strong mind doesn't need constant validation. A strong mind stands firm when everything around it is crumbling. That's the kind of mind I want you to build. Let me tell you something. Your mind is the source of all your behavior. Your actions don't determine your thinking. Your thinking determines your actions. Change your mind, and you change your life. It's that simple and that profound. Most people struggle their entire lives because they never understand this principle. They try to change their circumstances without first changing their minds. They attempt to alter results without addressing the source. That's like trying to purify water by cleaning it after it comes out of the pipe, instead of cleaning the source. Your circumstances today are a direct result of the thoughts you've been thinking for years. The good news is that if you don't like your circumstances, you can change your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, you change everything. I once met a woman who had been trapped in poverty her entire life. Her family had been poor for generations. Poverty wasn't just her condition, it was her mindset. When I spoke with her, I asked her a simple question. What do you think about wealth? Her answer revealed everything. She said, wealth is for other people, not for people like me. I looked at her and said, your poverty isn't in your pocket. It's in your mind. 6 years later, that same woman owns 3 successful businesses. What changed? Not the economy, not her education, not her connections. What changed was her mind. She built a mind so strong that poverty could no longer hold her captive. When you build a strong mind, you become dangerous to mediocrity. You become a threat to complacency. You disrupt the status quo just by walking into a room. People who are comfortable with average will be uncomfortable around you. Your very presence will challenge their excuses. Let me tell you another story. There was a young man I mentored years ago. He came from a background where no one had ever graduated from high school. His family told him college was a waste of time. His friends laughed when he talked about his dreams. But this young man made a decision. He decided to build his mind every day. He read books every week. He found someone successful to learn from. Every month, he evaluated his thinking to identify limiting beliefs. His family called him arrogant. His friends stopped inviting him places. People in his neighborhood spread rumors about him. Why? Because a strong mind scares people who are committed to weakness. Today, that young man has a doctoral degree. He runs organizations that employ people from his old neighborhood. He travels the world speaking to leaders. Did his mind change his life? No, his mind created a new life entirely. You see, the mind is like a muscle. It responds to resistance. It grows when challenged. It strengthens when forced to solve problems. Most people avoid mental resistance at all costs. They run from challenges. They hide from problems. Then they wonder why their minds remain weak. Building a strong mind requires intentional exposure to ideas that challenge you. It demands that you question your assumptions. It necessitates the painful process of admitting when you're wrong. Weak minds defend their limitations. Strong minds surrender their limitations. I want you to understand something fundamental. Your potential is not determined by your past. Your potential is determined by the capacity of your mind to conceive a different future. The stronger your mind, then the greater your potential. When I speak of a strong mind, I'm not talking about stubbornness. Stubbornness is often a sign of mental weakness, not strength. A truly strong mind is flexible, adaptable, and open to new information. It's strong because it's secure enough to change when necessary. A strong mind is built on principles, not opinions. Opinions change with the wind. Principles stand firm through storms. When you build your mind on principles, you become unmovable on matters of value and unshakable in times of challenge. One principle I built my mind upon is this: I am responsible for my life, not the government, not my parents, not my circumstances, me. When you take complete responsibility for your life, you take back your power from everyone and everything else. Another principle: problems are not obstacles to success, they are opportunities for growth. When you embrace this principle, you stop running from problems and start running toward them. You understand that each problem solved strengthens your mental capacity. Here's another: my value is inherent, not earned. I don't need to perform to be worthy. I am already worthy. When this principle takes root in your mind, rejection loses its sting. Criticism becomes information and not condemnation. Failure becomes feedback, not finality. These principles and others like them form the foundation of a mind so strong it scares people. A mind that refuses to be defined by circumstances. A mind that creates rather than complains. A mind that leads rather than follows. Building this kind of mind takes time. There are no shortcuts. Just as you cannot build physical strength without consistent exercise, you cannot build mental strength without consistent mental work. What does this mental work look like? It begins with what you feed your mind. Just as your body is built from the food you eat, your mind is built from the information you consume. Most people feed their minds mental junk food all day long: gossip, negativity, triviality. A strong mind requires nutritious mental food, ideas that challenge and expand you, concepts that deepen your understanding, perspectives that broaden your viewpoint. your mind will never rise above the level of information you regularly consume. The second aspect of this mental work is reflection. Information without reflection is merely entertainment. It's not enough to expose yourself to powerful ideas. You must think deeply about these ideas. You must question them. You must apply them. You must integrate them into your existing framework of understanding. I spend time every day in reflection. No music, no distractions, just me and my thoughts. Examining what I've learned and how it connects to what I already know. This practice has transformed my mind from a bucket that collects information into a factory that produces wisdom. The third aspect is application. Knowledge unapplied is merely opinion. To build a strong mind, you must act on what you know. You must test your understanding against reality. You must be willing to fail. Learn, adjust, and try again. This cycle of application and adjustment strengthens your mind like nothing else. Now, let's talk about the prison most people live in. It's not made of concrete and steel. It has no guards with weapons. This prison exists solely in the mind. Yet it's more confining than any physical cell could ever be. I'm talking about mental limitations, the invisible barriers that keep you from becoming who you were born to be. Mental limitations are like chains around your potential. They restrict your movement. They confine your growth. They imprison your purpose. And the most dangerous thing about these limitations is that most people don't even know they're wearing them. I remember visiting a wildlife sanctuary years ago. There was an eagle that had been rescued after being injured. This magnificent bird, designed to soar above mountains, had been kept in a small cage during its recovery. When they finally moved it to a large enclosure with open sky above, something strange happened. The eagle refused to fly higher than the height of its previous cage, though nothing physically restrained it. The eagle had mentally accepted its limitations. It had been programmed to believe that freedom only extended so far. Too many humans live exactly like that eagle. Nothing is physically stopping them from soaring. But mentally, they've accepted the height of their cage as the limit of their potential. When I was starting my work years ago, I approached a potential mentor, a man I deeply respected. I asked him to guide me, to help me develop my gifts. Do you know what he told me? He said, "Son, people like us don't do things like that. Know your place." He wasn't being cruel. In his mind, he was being realistic. He had accepted mental limitations placed on him by others. And he was simply passing those limitations on to me. I walked away from that conversation with a choice. I could accept his limitations as my own, or I could break free from them. I decided that day that no one's limited thinking would define my potential. No one's small vision would constrain my purpose. Breaking mental limitations begins with recognizing them. You can't escape a prison you don't know you're in. So let me help you identify some common mental limitations that might be holding you back. The first limitation is what I call inherited thinking. These are beliefs you've absorbed from your family, culture, and community without ever questioning them. Beliefs like people from our background don't start businesses. Higher education isn't for people like us. Financial success always requires dishonesty. You can't be successful and maintain your values. These inherited beliefs weren't installed in your mind to harm you. Often, they were passed down by people who genuinely loved you and wanted to protect you from disappointment. But love doesn't make them true. And good intentions don't make them helpful. I worked with a brilliant young woman who had incredible artistic talent. Her paintings moved people to tears. But she refused to pursue art professionally because her family had taught her that art wasn't a real career. For years, she worked at a job she hated because she accepted someone else's limited thinking about her future. One day, I asked her a simple question: who told you that you couldn't make a living from your art? And what qualifies them to make that judgment? That question cracked open her mental prison. And today, her work hangs in galleries around the world. She broke the limitation not by getting more talented. She was already talented. She broke it by questioning its validity. The second limitation is personal trauma. Painful experiences have a way of teaching us lessons we were never meant to learn. If you failed at something significant, you might have learned that you're not good enough. If someone betrayed your trust, you might have learned that people can't be trusted. If your heart was broken, you might have learned that vulnerability equals pain. These lessons aren't universal truths. They're protective mechanisms your mind created during moments of pain. And while they may have served you then, they're limiting you now. I know a man who experienced bankruptcy early in his career. The shame and struggle were so painful that his mind created a limitation. Financial risk leads to ruin. For nearly a decade, this mental limitation kept him playing small. He turned down opportunities. He avoided expansion. He rejected partnerships. All because his mind was protecting him from a pain it didn't want to experience again. His breakthrough came when he realized that his past failure wasn't a life sentence, it was a lesson. The lesson wasn't never take risks. The lesson was take smarter risks. Once he redefined the meaning of his experience, the limitation lost its power. The third limitation is fear disguised as wisdom. This is perhaps the most deceptive limitation because it masquerades as maturity. It uses phrases like be realistic and think practically to keep you from pursuing greatness. True wisdom acknowledges obstacles but finds ways through them. Fear disguised as wisdom sees obstacles and uses them as excuses to turn back. One says, this will be difficult, so I need a strategy. The other says, this will be difficult, so it's probably not meant to be. I mentored a young leader who wanted to transform his community through education. When he shared his vision with experienced people, they told him to scale back his plans. Be realistic, they said. Start smaller. Focus on helping just a few people. Their advice sounded wise, prudent, reasonable. But their wisdom was actually fear in disguise. They weren't teaching him prudence. They were teaching him to accommodate their comfort with mediocrity. He chose to reject their limitations. Today, his organization has educated thousands of students who were written off by traditional systems. The fourth limitation is success itself. Ironically, what you've achieved can prevent you from achieving what's next. When you become successful in one area, there's tremendous pressure to stay within that lane. People know you for certain accomplishments. They reward you for certain behaviors. They celebrate certain aspects of your identity. Stepping beyond your established success feels risky. What if you fail? What if people reject this new version of you? What if your new pursuit doesn't measure up to your previous achievements? I've seen countless individuals trapped by their success, afraid to express new gifts, explore new interests, or pursue new callings. They've allowed their previous achievements to define the boundaries of their potential. A successful attorney I worked with felt called to write children's books. For years, she kept this passion hidden. concerned that her colleagues would lose respect for her if she pursued something so different from her established identity. Her mental limitation was the belief that she could only be one thing, that her success in law somehow disqualified her from success in creativity. When she finally broke this limitation, she discovered that her legal mind brought unique strengths to her storytelling. The precision of language she developed as an attorney made her an exceptional children's author. What she feared would be a liability became an asset. Breaking mental limitations isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. Every new level of growth brings new limitations to break through. Every new achievement creates new boundaries to push beyond. Every new season reveals new thinking that needs to be challenged. The practice begins with a simple question: is this belief true? Or have I just accepted it as true? When you find a belief that doesn't stand up to scrutiny, replace it with a truth that empowers rather than limits. Remember, the mind that got you here won't get you there. The thinking that brought you to your current level of success isn't sufficient for your next level. Breaking mental limitations isn't just about achieving more. It's about becoming more and more of who you were created to be. The difference between those who make history and those who merely observe it is simple: conviction. Not talent, not opportunity, not connections. Conviction. That unshakable certainty that stands firm when everything else trembles. That internal compass that guides when external conditions confuse. A mind with conviction is a force of nature. I once spoke with a successful businessman who employed thousands of people. I asked him what quality he looked for when hiring leaders. Without hesitation, he said, I can train skills, I can provide resources. What I cannot manufacture is conviction. When I find someone with genuine conviction, I can build an empire around them. Conviction isn't stubbornness. Stubbornness refuses to change despite evidence. Conviction remains steadfast because of evidence, the evidence of your purpose. Your vision, your values. The strongest minds are built on unshakable conviction. Years ago, I met a young woman in a village who started a school under a tree. She had no building, no formal training, no government support. What she had was conviction, the absolute certainty that the children in her village deserved education. When I asked why she continued despite overwhelming obstacles, she looked at me with fire in her eyes and said, because if I stop, who will teach them? That woman now runs one of the most successful educational networks in her country. Her conviction attracted resources. Her conviction inspired others. Her conviction overcame obstacles that would have defeated someone with mere interest or casual commitment. How do you cultivate this kind of unshakable conviction? It begins with clarity. Conviction cannot exist in the fog of uncertainty. You must be crystal clear about what you believe, why you believe it, and what you're willing to sacrifice for it. Most people live with vague notions rather than clear convictions. They have preferences, not principles. They have wishes, not vision. They have desires, not purpose. Vague notions crumble under pressure. Only clear convictions stand strong. I spoke with a man who survived brutal political imprisonment. For years, he was tortured for his beliefs. I asked him how he endured without breaking. He told me, they could only break me if I was uncertain about what I stood for. My clarity was my strength. When you know exactly what you're willing to die for, nothing else can destroy you. Clarity comes from asking yourself hard questions and demanding honest answers. What do I truly believe about myself? What values will I never compromise? What purpose am I willing to suffer for? The answers to these questions form the foundation of unshakable conviction. The second element of conviction is personalization. It's not enough to believe something is true. You must believe it's true for you. Many people have knowledge they haven't personalized. They can recite principles they don't apply. They can quote wisdom they don't embody. True conviction occurs when truth moves from your head to your heart, when it becomes not just something you know, but something you are. When conviction becomes personalized, it transforms from information you process to identity you protect. I knew a man who could speak eloquently about integrity in business. He could quote every book on ethical leadership. But when faced with a situation that tested his integrity, he failed. Why? Because integrity was his opinion, not his conviction. He knew it was true, but he hadn't made it true for him. The third element of conviction is cost. You don't develop conviction for free. Every genuine conviction costs you something. It might cost you popularity when you stand against the crowd. It might cost you comfort when you choose purpose over pleasure. It might cost you relationships when others don't share your vision. Are you willing to pay the price for your convictions? Most aren't. They want conviction without cost. They want the strength of absolute certainty without the sacrifice it requires. But that transaction doesn't exist. The depth of your conviction will always be proportional to the price you've paid for it. I worked with a leader who was offered millions to compromise his values. The amount would have solved every financial challenge he faced when he declined without hesitation. His colleagues were shocked. How could you walk away from that? They asked. His response was profound. I've invested too much in who I am to sell it so cheaply. That's conviction, knowing that who you are is worth more than what you might gain by compromising. When you cultivate this level of conviction, your mind becomes unshakable. People sense it when they meet you. They feel the weight of your certainty. They recognize the power of your clarity. A mind with conviction doesn't seek permission to stand firm. It doesn't need constant validation to maintain its position. It doesn't waver when challenged or retreat when threatened. This is the kind of mind that transforms environments just by entering them. This is the kind of mind that scares those who live by consensus rather than conviction. Your thoughts will take you where your thinking allows. Most people never become thought leaders because they're too busy being thought followers. They repeat what others think. They believe what others believe. They accept what others accept. But a mind so strong it scares people isn't built by following the mental paths of others. It's built by forging new paths through the wilderness of possibility. Thought leadership isn't a title. It's a discipline. It's the daily commitment to think beyond conventional boundaries, to question established norms, to challenge comfortable assumptions. It's mental work most people aren't willing to do. I met a man in a small town who transformed his entire industry. He didn't have exceptional resources. He didn't have powerful connections. What he had was the discipline of original thinking. While his competitors copied each other, he questioned everything about how business in his field operated. Why do we do it this way? What if we tried something completely different? For years, people laughed at his questions. They called him impractical, unrealistic, even foolish. Today, those same people are struggling to copy his methods. That's thought leadership, the willingness to look foolish today to be brilliant tomorrow. The discipline begins with solitude. Your most powerful thoughts will never emerge in the noise of constant input. They need space. They need silence. They need your full attention. Most people are uncomfortable with solitude. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, and the thoughts of others. Then they wonder why they never have breakthrough ideas. I guard my thinking time with fierce protection. No phone, no interruptions, no distractions. Just me, a notebook, and the freedom to pursue a thought to its conclusion. This practice has yielded more value than any course I've taken or any mentor I've consulted. The second element of this discipline is questioning. Strong minds ask questions that weak minds avoid. They don't just question others, they question themselves. They question their assumptions. They question their conclusions. They question their questions. A business leader I worked with turned his failing company around with one practice. He instituted what he calls sacred questioning. Every week, his team had to question one fundamental assumption about their business. Why do we believe this market won't pay premium prices? Why do we think this process can't be faster? Why do we assume our competitors have an advantage? This practice of disciplined questioning transformed their thinking, which transformed their actions, which transformed their results. That's the power of thought leadership. The third element is contrarian thinking. This isn't opposing for opposition's sake. It's the deliberate practice of considering the opposite of what everyone else believes to be true. When the crowd moves in one direction, the thought leader asks, what value might lie in the opposite direction? When consensus forms around an idea, most people stop thinking. They simply adopt the consensus. The thought leader keeps thinking. Especially when consensus is strongest. They ask, what is everyone missing? What blind spots exist in the prevailing perspective? This discipline of thought leadership doesn't make you popular. It often makes you misunderstood. But it builds a mind so original, so incisive, so penetrating that it naturally leads others through the sheer force of its clarity. That kind of mind doesn't follow the future, it creates it. The ultimate test of a strong mind isn't what it achieves. It's what it leaves behind. A truly powerful mind creates a legacy that outlasts its physical presence. It plants seeds of transformation that continue growing long after the planter has gone. Your greatest contribution won't be what you build. It will be the minds you shape. Let me tell you the story of a teacher I met years ago in a remote village. This man had opportunities to work in the capital city for much higher pay. But he chose to remain in his village school. When I asked him why, his answer revealed a mind that understood legacy. He said, in the city, I will be teaching children who have many teachers. Here, I am often the only educated adult these children will ever know. My mind might be the only window through which they see a bigger world. For over 40 years, this teacher poured his knowledge, his wisdom, his very thinking patterns into generations of students. He lived simply, he owned little. But his legacy was extraordinary. Among his former students were doctors, engineers, government ministers, and business leaders. Each carried part of his mind with them, his way of thinking, his approach to problems, his mental disciplines. At his funeral, thousands came from across the country and around the world, one after another. They told stories of how this one man's mind had shaped their own. His legacy wasn't built of brick and mortar. It was built in the neural pathways of every mind he influenced. A strong mind reproduces itself in others. It doesn't hoard wisdom, it transfers it. It doesn't guard insights, it shares them. It doesn't protect methods, it teaches them. The strongest minds are those that strengthen other minds. I often ask leaders a simple question: if you suddenly disappeared, Would your vision continue or collapse? Their answer reveals whether they've built a legacy or merely an achievement. Achievements disappear when you do. Legacy continues without you. Building this kind of legacy requires intention. You must consciously transfer not just your knowledge, but your thinking processes. You must articulate not just your conclusions, but how you reach them. You must make visible the invisible work of your mind so others can learn not just what you know, but how you know it. When I mentor young leaders, I often think out loud, exposing the mental paths I'm traveling. Here's what I'm noticing. Here's why it concerns me. Here's how I'm analyzing it. Here's how I reach this conclusion. This transparent thinking transfers mental patterns, not just information. A mind so strong it scares people isn't satisfied with personal success. It's driven to reproduce its strength in others. It finds fulfillment not in being irreplaceable, but in creating a generation that can go further than it did. Your mind was given to you not just for your benefit, but for others. The thoughts you think, the insights you gain, the wisdom you acquire, none of it was meant to end with you. It was meant to flow through you to others. So build a mind so strong it scares people. Break through mental limitations that hold you captive. Cultivate unshakable conviction about what matters most. Practice the discipline of thought leadership. And then, with intentional focus, transfer the power of your mind to others. That's how you build not just a successful life, but a significant legacy. A legacy of mind so strong they continue transforming the world long after you're gone.